What's going on, guys? Hey, welcome to another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Harper, and this episode is a little bit special for me because I have known Miss Madeleine York for, probably going on 30 plus years. She was one of my first customers. She gives a really vital lesson about customer service, or did back in the day when I was a young pup entrepreneur, and how that has formed my way of thinking to this day. I share that with her. I know that makes a huge impact on her, that she didn't realize that she had imparted that wisdom and that it stuck with me. But Madeleine and I have kept in touch throughout the years, and I have great fascination with her work because she is such a committed professional to helping others. Talk about a rippler. She creates them, she makes them. She has a no-nonsense way of communicating what you need to hear, even when you don't want to hear it. But she does it in such a respectful manner that she really makes significant inroads on behalf of the clients she serves. She's a phenomenal entrepreneur, she's an amazing person, and she's a good friend of mine, and I can't wait for you to meet her. So let's dive into this episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast with Madeleine York. Guys, I am super excited to introduce you to Madeleine York. I have known Madeleine for probably more years than we actually care to admit, but I am so grateful that you agreed to be a part of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Madeleine, how are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Stephen. I'm just doing fine. I look forward to continuing our relationship. As you said, we've had for years, and we'll see how that manifests.
I love that. I know that you're a woman of many talents. I've known you for a long time. I know you've been heavily involved in a number of areas to help people maximize their career development and get a little bit more directly involved and in control of where they want to take their career. And we're going to dive into all of that, but I want to give our audience just a little sense of who you are and kind of how you found your way into this type of work.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. At least it is to me. I was in a very different field, which I think is helpful to people as well to understand that, or at least know it. My degree is in a totally different field than I'm in, and I was part of a quote unquote layoff, whatever fancy word we want to put on it,
Yeah.
and actually in a hospital setting. And I was a director level. And so through my work with people who do what I do today, I came to understand how to do some skills transference, if you will. What I really came to understand is my resume was not going to be able to adequately or at all reflect my desires to move forward, to change my career.
Oh,
I did not want to stay in that industry, if you will. So what I learned, a couple things throughout that process, is connecting with people, how important that was and still is. How
yeah.
important it is just to let people know where you're at, and so on and so forth. And through that, and from some assessments I actually took at the time, I was asked to do this work on a contract basis. Another thing that I like for people to think about, if they can, I know not everyone can go the contract route, but I did. And after 3 months, I was offered a full time job. And this was a company that did handle the outplacement, job search, whatever one wants to refer to it as. And so I got to know the people in that organization, and they saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see at the time. Again, connecting with people in a
Sure.
very open way too. No heart, no bars hold, because you need to let people know who you are as a person, what your dreams are, especially if they're different from the
Yeah.
industry or the work you were doing. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious. Let me just stop you for one sec. So, was the contract opportunity something that you proposed, or is because I'm really fascinated by that because that's something that I give as advice to people that I coach through career transition. It's a way for you to sort of try it before you buy it, but they get an opportunity to see you in a real work environment with real tasks, and because they're generally paying you a little higher um, uh, fee, right? Because you're a consultant, the pressure is on you to perform, and when you do, it obviously does turn some heads and get some attention. So I think it's a fantastic strategy. I'm curious, was that one you put forward or they put forward?
Actually, in the day, we had, that particular company had, and there's less of it today via COVID and so on, offices. So I was able to
Yeah.
interact more with the owner and other people in that organization at the time. So he actually came to me. The owner had a project, and somehow again he saw something. I wanted to do the work, but I had no clue on how to get there. Again, a good story for people who want to transition. So no, he did it. A real quick side story is when I met with him and his partner at the time, and he explained how this worked. I remember asking him, "Well, what happens when I'm not working?" Yeah.
Yeah.
So not real bright question because it was on contract. You got paid when you worked and you didn't get paid. Well, I was used to a paycheck. I'd never worked
Sure.
like this before.
Yeah. Very
So
odd. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. New
So at the end of
adjustment.
the 3 months, it was obvious that I was good at what I was doing the work I was doing. I was connecting to people. And the night before I did my first session, I remember going to the owner and saying, I don't know, I guess I had a mini panic attack. Like, I've not done this before. And he said, Well, you've been through the program. I said, Yes. He said, Well, just don't tell anybody that you haven't done this before.
What a fabulous first client to have at that juncture, right? That's awesome. Well, and it wasn't as if you were faking it till you made it. You knew what to do. It was just this was a new adventure for you in terms of how you perform in terms of the work
Absolutely.
product.
I remember
Yeah.
going through the process in my mind saying, I could do this. This could be fun, But again, I didn't have the excuse me, the background, skills, education. It was all in a very different industry. Yeah.
Wow. So you ended up doing that for contract and then you ended up going to work for them, or did you decide
Yes.
maybe this was an avenue I pursue from a consulting
No, it
perspective?
was it was funny because on the day I was offered the job was April 1st. And I remember the
That'll be
owner coming
memorable.
to me, yeah, and
Yeah.
saying, "Okay, would you like to convert to full time?" And I remember looking at him saying, "Is
No
this
joke.
April Fool's or is this real?" And it was real.
That's awesome. Are you still in touch with, those folks that you worked with back
Yeah,
then?
I am.
That's great.
I married the man who brought me in.
Ah, this was Norman.
Yeah.
So, Madeline and Norman, I've known them forever, but I did not know that story. That is awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you exceeded in your
Yeah.
role big time.
Exceeded expectations or certainly met them.
Just to
Yeah.
be fair, for anybody who's thinking about contract, that's not a requirement, apparently. That's awesome. And so when you went to work full time, how is it that you focused your energies to decide to start your career development, and what was that about? And give us some sense of
Yeah.
the inspiration behind that.
Well, okay. So back up a little bit. So at the time, the company was Norman had a an office in Austin for someone else who owned the company. It was called Reedy and Company. Okay.
Yeah,
So I worked for him, and then he eventually broke off and from that relationship and moved forward. So all that time I was with him and working for him and with him. However, what worked out well for me, and this is just laying it out there, I was new to the world, new to that field, new to everything. So but Norman was the first chair, I like to say. So Norman was the first chair, I was the second chair. Okay, became that fairly quickly. Other employees did bookkeeping, so on. And so because he was that, and him, so he was well respected
yeah,
and liked and so on and so forth, and educated much more in that world than I, he would meet with someone first, and then I became an outgrowth of Norman at that point, right?
yeah,
So it's like, well, if he's good, he knows what he's doing. He wouldn't have someone in his employ that doesn't merit. And then, of course, the first meeting, I would quickly merit that relationship. But
yeah.
the first time another person in the organization came to me right before a meeting and said, by the way, I want you to do the interviewing with no prep, no anything. I think I had a list of questions that she had provided to me.
Uh,
So we go in the office, and you're talking about the day of VHS, cameras, iPod, pods, and all this
yeah,
stuff. So we sit down, I do my thing, and we pretty much had C-suite people at the time. This was a banker, if I'm not mistaken. So I do my dog and pony right, and I ask them the questions, and then I go to replay it. And guess who forgot to put the record on? And bless his heart, he was just decent, and just so we went through the questions as I could repeat them anyway. But it was just like, oh my gosh, he was
uh,
very kind to me. But subsequent to that, that's my first intro into this. And maybe it's a good thing it happened because it again it is for something that I feel very comfortable with and enjoy doing a lot, and I believe I'm good at. But after that, whenever somebody would walk out of the office, if Norman knew we were interviewing, he'd look at them and he'd say, "Did you pass?" And I'd say, "I don't think so."
you were that tough.
Straightforward. Yeah, no holes no holes. What am I trying to say here?
Barred, yeah, no holds
Yeah,
barred. Yeah, yeah.
no holes barred.
Didn't pull any punches.
Yeah, because what was the point?
Yeah,
But I did it. For instance, I would typically say, "Well, this is what I heard," and we're
yeah,
looking at it. At that point, I remembered to record it, but it wasn't visual actually. Did we? I'm not sure if we even had the visual then. I think it was just
yeah.
audio.
Wow.
And most times, or very often, to be like, well, no, that's not really the message I meant to send. And
Yeah,
so that's where that could be, was very, very helpful in the early stages and days. And that's where I learned where people were um, answering questions maybe too quickly,
yeah,
maybe from the heart. This is a business interview. We
yeah.
need to look at it from that perspective. So
Yeah, I like your approach there because I actually was sharing, you and I had a conversation last week when we were talking about doing this interview about the fact that you sort of need to know that environment and understand people don't put in the time necessary to really understand that interview process. And sometimes you can really, really miss the mark because you haven't done the research and you don't really know or really understand the environment you're walking into, and that can create some missed opportunities for you, especially as an interview candidate.
yeah, and it's a little bit of I was talking to a client about this recently, though, and here's something I didn't think about as much: the energy transition, if you will, when you're in a room versus what a lot of these people are doing now is obviously something like this. Some of them are just sent met questions, and that's too bad. I mean, I work with them on that, and we do what we can, but it is still a computer to each person. And yourself, Steve, you walk in a room, you might see something that you can connect to. The person's a golfer or they have
Yep.
children. I don't know, whatever it is, right? You can kind of start that conversation off that way and make it a little lighter. But there is energy transference. And when we have good energy, that's going to show up as well as maybe not in a one on one, but there's that I think people need to think through too, and maybe be even a bit more higher level energy, smiling, whatever, than they might be normally.
Yeah, because I mean, especially in an like a virtual setting like we're in, right? Being able to, there's a lot of nonverbal cues that the interviewer is picking up on, and so
Yeah,
if you just look like you're very pensive and looking down and
there you
seem
go.
nervous, I mean that you may not even intend to be doing that, but it
No,
gives off something, and it does tell either it does tell them something subconsciously about how prepared you are or really how confident you are walking
confident
into
for
the
sure.
interview.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
agree with you wholeheartedly. In person, it's a little easier, but then it also becomes harder sometimes because you're meeting a stranger. You're trying to put on your best effort, in terms of, putting your best foot forward in the conversation. And sometimes, and you touched on this last week, that sometimes people don't know when to stop. They they hear they hear the question and they answer it and then go way past more than they should have. I think I'm guilty as charged all the time on this. So I'm curious
right.
about your take there to bring maybe
Well,
see if you could expand upon it.
yeah, and we know that as well. It was funny or interesting to me. The fella who brought that back to me, one of my clients, very, very leaning towards, I don't categorize people, but leaning towards much more introversion, much more
Yeah.
quiet, much more coming from his head. But bless his heart, because he wanted to make sure, again, that they really totally understand. They broke it down. A lot of people from that perspective do. They have to get to the minutiae. They have to, cover every detail, and that's has to be a bit of unlearned in an interview setting, because you do lose people, and they're not asking for every single detail about your prior company. They'll often mention the company. It's like, yeah, you're not there anymore, so you don't want to mention that company. But there are a lot of paths that one can go down. And again, with the energy issue, there was someone who was advising, and I don't know your stance on this or not, but I'm totally not for it. And this is that they have three screens, and that they look here for
Yeah.
their answers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, look, most of us are just not trained for that. If you're in
Yeah.
media, maybe so, whatever. But when you do this, they know exactly what you're
That's
doing.
exactly right. Yep.
And I said, please do not do that, and don't obviously memorize answers and so on and so forth. So that becomes problematic for people who are not, really think it's a confidence issue, Steve.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That they're not, they know they can do the job, but they're not confident in their presentation. And this is where repetition, repetition, repetition can be so helpful, that they can see themselves back and realize, oh my, I've just talked too much, or I missed the point. And often when we talk too much, we go off in some tangent.
That's very true. I
Really.
will say, since you said that last week, I've been very aware and concerned about this interview today. I'm like, okay, let's make sure we ask the bare minimum and then just shut up, right? I do have to. I will share something with you, and then I want to come back to this because I think it's really fascinating. But one of the things that I would tell you, I met you as a young entrepreneur. I was working for the Xerox agency, my
Yeah.
company at that time. I lacked a whole lot of confidence, and you were probably one of my first 10 customers. And
Yeah.
the one of the things that you purchased for me was a printer. It was like one of the first color printers, and I remember we ordered it. It took a while to get in. You finally got it in, and then there was a problem with it. And I went out, and I'm trying to do my best, and certainly best customer service that I can, but I still needed a technician to fix it. And you gave me a hugely valuable lesson. It was one that I obviously knew, but hearing it from you and the way you did it with the kindness and the gentleness
Um,
that you did was, hey, just don't BS me. Tell me what the truth is. Tell me what the issue is and what you're going to do to resolve it. Because anything else is just going to take, this in a bad direction. And you had every right to be upset and frustrated because it took so long and it wasn't working, but you were so kind and so genuine. And I went back and I had a conversation with the technician. It turned out it was a pretty minor problem. We got it fixed pretty quickly. And you came back to me like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and you're like, that's customer service. You follow up and you did what you needed to do. But I remember you distinctly kind of pulling me aside, and you were just so kind. And you said, customers only just want to hear the truth. So tell them good, bad, or indifferent, just
yeah.
be honest. And that
Yeah.
has served me so well. It was one of the first
Yeah.
lessons that I really needed to hear from someone like you at your caliber, that
Right.
really implied how I did what I did from that point forward. And it still rings true to this day. And everything I do, whether it's through Ripple or through my
Yeah.
software company, it's absolutely 100% true.
Well, thank you for that. And today still, I mean, I had a call earlier today, and it's like, please, just what's going on,
Yep.
because things happen is the expression I use. Things happen. I mean, I'm not unrealistic to that, but please don't excuse this, especially as an owner for employees, right? And it's just, well, they were feeling bad that day, or they whatever. It's like, yeah, but can we just get to the issue, get it resolved, move forward?
Yeah,
So I appreciate
exactly.
you're saying that, because it is still a mantra I live by today. It's I'm very aware that, again, things happen, so let's
Yep.
just fix it.
I love it. Well, as it ties back to that, made me think of that when you and I were chatting last week, and just how instrumental you were. And I know that's how you are for the clients that you serve. You have a way of delivering even maybe not so great news in a really respectful and um, really amazing way to get somebody to hear it. So I could see if I blew my interview or I didn't do as well as I should have, I could see having you in my corner to help guide and say, okay, look, this may have not gone the way we wanted it, but how do we learn from what happened and what occurred? And what do we do to make sure that the next time you go out, whether it's in person or online, you're ready to go and you don't even think about the prior performance, but you learn
That's
from it.
really
You don't
true.
just dwell on it.
No, and that's actually still something I say to folks in relationship to the interview. If you prepare, if you've done everything you can't make someone hire you. So
Yeah.
do the best you can and walk away. If there needs to be follow up with a letter of some kind to reinforce part of it, a part of the conversation or bring something up. I mean, separate issue, but don't beat yourself up. Not if you've done what all you can do. Just let it go because that will linger in a negative
Yeah.
for the next one.
I love that. So the
So,
work that you're shifting to do to help people that are in career transition, let's let's dive into that a little bit. Just explain a little bit about where your focus is now and certainly the goals that you set for yourself to help the clients you serve.
well, the main one that I've been doing a lot of self searching, soul searching, I guess, on and thinking about reinventing myself, which you're the greatest person to talk to about that because you're always doing something
Thank you.
interesting and different. It's like, what's Steve up to now? Um,
I don't
but
think my wife would agree with that necessarily. We won't ask her. It's
Yeah,
fine.
no, we won't ask her. Or no, yeah. I have some comments I make in sessions I do sometimes, and it's like, well, not sure my husband would agree with that, but it works for me. Mainly talking about insights, but having said that, moving on, my passion really is because I think it's really maybe the biggest. I'm hesitating, but certainly one of the biggest aspects of getting that next position is the interview process.
Yeah.
Because I believe, and maybe not totally 100%, but I believe if someone's being interviewed in any field, technical, soft skills, whatever, they've met the requirement because I don't believe people give courtesy interviews today.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
in the
there.
day,
You're in the door. Yeah.
yeah. So now we're looking at that fit word. We're looking at, your personality and so on and so forth, integrity, honesty, whatever it is. And this is where you can get tripped up and maybe sometimes setting the stage, well, always setting the stage, but for you to interview the person, even if it's just in your head, because it could be situations where you really leave that and should not go down that path. It's the wrong path. I had a client who used the word hammer organization. I knew what he meant by that, so I
Yeah.
didn't ask him to define it, but he said, I don't want it. Been there, done it,
Yeah.
and he found the right organization for him because it
Okay.
wasn't that.
Yeah.
And so the point is that knowing that ahead of time. So interviews can go both ways. I don't think people think about that either, but I have a way to help set the stage for the interview to kind of keep people, or hopefully keep people on track about the content of the interview, but also to showcase yourself in ways that uh, may not show up in the typical resume. I don't appreciate people just reading through the resume. It's boring, so on and so forth. You need to put accomplishments. You need to let people know what you've done with your skills. You can't just say, I have these skills, which is another thing that a lot of people will do. They'll just answer in that way. Well, I've done this, or this is a skill set, blah, 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 but with no implementation.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. I might have a skill to ride a bike, but I probably shouldn't be out there doing it.
Yeah.
So going through from that perspective, setting up the stage for them. If people will, well, it's not if, when people do a good job on interviewing, when they practice, they get a lot farther and they get probably, well, I believe more offers. So that's kind of my passion right now. I still enjoy group presentations, group work, so on and so forth. And then I'm looking towards being on a couple of boards, some board positions. So I'm kind of reinventing myself.
I love it.
And I'm not as interested in the day to day dynamics of resumes. Negotiating offers are okay, but I go back to, and Steve, you may find this because the question I have been working with a company part time, and there's so much focus on social media, on the resume, and changing every word and massaging it for every job. that my question is, have we lost this? I don't know if we've lost the capability, or have we lost the how to help people understand the value of people, or is it gone? I mean, is it gone?
Yeah, it's a great it's a great question. I don't think it's gone. I think that it is. You see a shift in the generational dynamics and how people go about connecting with another human being. It's not easy, right? And
No.
I tell my clients, like, it didn't matter what your first job was. My guess is that somebody didn't take you by the hand and said, "Come on, kid, let me show you how to get along with the other kids in
No.
the sandbox."
Yeah.
We base our entire identity by job title, our ambitions, our expectations of where we're going, and sometimes, especially when you're in a situation where maybe, and you and I you and I talked about this. I mean, ageism is alive and well in the interview process in a big way, and there's a lot of folks that haven't really thought through, how do I tell my story without coming across as braggadocious or dictatorial or go off on these tangents, right? You have to connect with the person that's interviewing you, and you have to find a way to make that inroad, connect with them, because really at the end of the day, like you said, it is a two-way street on an interview. But at the end of the day, all your past accomplishments, notwithstanding, you still have to demonstrate why this is somebody that they really need to take a second look at. And part of how you do that doesn't really reveal itself on the resume or in the canned interview questions. It comes across in your personality. You mentioned energy and your enthusiasm, your body language, your level of
Right.
preparedness. All of those things are small, but important aspects of connecting with another human being. And this person holds the keys to the next level of interview or the job offer or whatever. And so putting in the prep work and understanding how to connect with another human being is really essential, I think, on the job search. And I find that a lot of people, and you may see this as well, is when they've lost a job or they find themselves in between roles, it's a shame process, right? They get really, really closed in. And so they
Yes.
spend most of their time online
Yep.
applying. They're not
Yep.
out talking to people. And so when these interviews come, if you haven't been in a situation where you've had a meaningful conversation with anybody other than your dog or your spouse or your best friend in the last
Right.
3 weeks, how
Right.
prepared do you think you are to have a conversation with someone that's going to interview you? So I always tell people that this is a relentless practice of getting better at connecting with humans at every level. Doesn't matter what they do, if it's the barista at Starbucks or
There
it's
you
the
go.
checkout clerk at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Get comfortable engaging with people, because when you are, it'll make everything that comes next in the interview process so much better. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking to buy talent that has the ability to communicate effectively and engage with people in a very respectful and authentic way.
I love your examples because
Thank you.
yeah, because being in this for as long as I have, I'm still focused more on the more official. But you're right. Going to Starbucks, going to the barista, talking to anybody will give you that sense of how to communicate. Not the sense of, I mean, it will showcase you in that way, but give you confidence, like to talk to somebody in an elevator. Some of the things that for me are normal or easy for me to do. That's great anywhere you go. Checker at the grocery store, or um, whatever, wherever you're around people, but also to get out of your house. So many folks are just spending 8 hours a day,
Yep.
applying for jobs, and it's very discouraging, in my opinion. And so find ways to go out there. And I know the other thing I run into, Steve, is people tend to stay in their own little bubble too.
Yep.
So if they're bankers, they bankers, right?
Only hang out with
Manufacturing,
bankers. Yep.
healthcare. And
Yep.
I always encourage them, please, just because your next door neighbor is in manufacturing and you're in banking doesn't mean they don't have family, friends, relatives,
Sure.
whatever, who are in your industry.
Yeah.
So trying to get them out of that. And then also when they get excited about an opportunity, they stop.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely want to come back to that,
Yes.
because you always, I have a saying that I tell all my candidates, even if they get a job, you were looking for a job when you found this one. So keep
Yeah.
your lines in the water.
Yeah.
not because we're looking to jump ship, but because
No.
it keeps you fresh. It keeps you
Yeah.
engaged in the process. And it reminds you that you're building both your personal and your professional brand all the time.
Right.
You made
Right.
me
But
think.
when they're in,
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry,
Go,
when
no,
they're
go
in
ahead. Go ahead.
job search and they get like so excited, right?
And then shut everything
And
else down. Yep.
yes. And then they wonder why it's taking a long time because you're restarting the whole process if you've totally shut down. And I see that a lot as well, that people are too, they believe the verbal, you just keep pitching,
You do.
get three offers, even
Yeah.
better.
That's even better.
Don't
Yes.
don't sit on one. Yeah.
Well, you made me think of a scenario. I was working with a client a few years back, and very shy, introverted individual like myself. It's not natural for me to get out and to connect and engage with people, but you have to know that about yourself, and you have to know what some of the limiting beliefs are and how that
Yes.
affects you, your imposter syndrome, and you got to get around those things.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was doing was trying to engage them because their entire day was consumed with sitting in their PJs and their fuzzy slippers and apply
Yeah.
for jobs. And so we started meeting at various coffee shops. One in particular we went back to more often than not, but I explained, look, this has nothing to do with the work, your job search. This has everything to do with once you get that job or you get the opportunity for the job, how you're going to handle yourself in your interview, how you're going to integrate with the new team, and how you're going to differentiate yourself as a real valued hire when you get there. And part of that comes in how you connect and engage with people. So the best place to start that in a very scary, somewhat scary environment is talking to strangers in environments that there are people there for a reason, right? Coffee, they're working or whatever. So we started working together and we started doing a few of these, what I like to call, I call a connection lab, but these field trips where we'd go and he'd have a new set of audience to go engage and connect and come back and kind of what worked, what didn't work kind of thing, right?
Wow.
And we got him going and he was working and he was really, really doing a great job. So much so that he stopped needing me to go with him kind of as his wingman. He just started going himself. Well, there was a Dell executive who I knew that went to the same Starbucks that we were going to, and she'd stopped by my table one time. She'd actually was pretty instrumental in getting me in the door out to do some training for Dell. Loved her; she was great. Never did I connect the two necessarily as being,
Hmm.
potentially compatible, or I wasn't showing his resume to her. There was really no
Yeah.
level of expectation. But I told him, he asked me one day, he goes, "How did you meet her?" And I said, "She actually saw me when I was writing my book the first time, years and years ago." And she finally asked me, "You're at this same coffee shop every day doing the same thing." And she finally just stopped at my table and she's like, "What are you working on so hard?" And then from there, we started a conversation. It came very casual. It's like, "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you." And the good morning. Then eventually she started coming over and spending 5 minutes and 10 minutes. Next thing you know, we become friends. When my book comes out, she gets my foot in the door at Dell, and, kind of the rest is history. And I said, I have absolutely no value to her other than I want to support her and be a friend to her. When she was looking at a role within Dell, she actually reached out to me and just wanted some advice. I wasn't pitching her on coaching. I wasn't trying to get any money from her. I
Yeah.
just wanted to represent what I could to help her. And she never forgot that, right? So fast forward a couple years, this is going on with this client, and he's starting to get out on his own. He calls me one day, just super excited, and he said, "Hey, that gal that you introduced me to a few months back? She stopped by my table today." And she told me the whole story of meeting you and what that consisted of and why she really appreciates the work that you do for people like me. And that led to my conversation about my job search and where I was going and what I was doing. She said, "I know exactly who you need to talk to at Dell. Can you send me your resume today?" He's like, "I have an interview at 2 o'clock." And he said,
Oh,
"I would never have gotten there had I not learned from you at the very beginning. But more importantly, when I started seeing her, even though she wasn't my friend, I started saying hello and doing the same things that I knew you would do and encourage me to do. And next thing I know, she's starting to talk to me a little more regularly. And then today she stops and boom, that's how it works, right? At the end of the day, you never know who's paying attention. You never know who sees you out creating what I call the positive ripples, but people pay attention and they take note. And sometimes your next employer may be sitting two tables over and you don't even know it, but they see how you interact or how you responded during that interview or the approach that you take. So I'm a big believer that you just, stack the odds in your favor and just do that for everybody. Try to be an outward champion of yourself and other people. And even if you're introverted, it'll build your confidence and help you build those skill sets. But even if you're extroverted, you'll realize that it isn't just about you. You have to focus your energy on other people. It has a positive response, right?
I love that story because it adds a dimension to job search that isn't really job search. So it's about connecting with people all the time, wherever you are. Be mindful of that. Be gracious. You're right. You never know who's going to be at the next table. Now, interesting you say about the extroverts. My biggest, from a marketing, a little off topic, but from a marketing perspective, is guess what? I talk, 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 and therefore I can leave a meeting, and I've done this, and it's like, oh my God, I didn't ask them one question about their problems, their issues. Where, what have they used before as far as assessments? It's like, oh, Madeline, you did it again. Yeah. So it's funny where more introverted people think, yes, but it's easy for you. You can connect, you can talk. And in some situations, that's very true. But from a business perspective, it isn't always good.
Yeah.
Where more introverted are going to be much more about listening, which clients appreciate. So anyway, I get into that little bit with folks who feel like they're challenged by conversations. But I love that's great.
Thank you. Well, I think I learned a lot of it from you, so I appreciate the skill
Oh,
sets. There's two acronyms I use with my clients that I think I'd throw out there for people who are like either they don't know how to do it or they do it and they know that they might be in that situation where they didn't ask, they talked too much or whatever. Wait, why am I talking? Have a purpose and understanding and appreciate it. So I use the acronym WAIT. And then waste. Why am I still talking?
oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's a perfect one for especially extroverts because then they realize, wait a second, am I allowing the space for conversation to happen?
Yeah.
And if I'm not, I need to put my hands on my waist and hold, right? So
Yeah. No, perfect. And the thing about it is we'll have conversation. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not what about why I'm there.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Well, I am curious, what is your take there on the interview process? I know you said it's a business meeting, it's not a social piece, but at the end of the day, do you try to guide your clients to understand you still have to show a little bit of authenticity. You have to try and
Oh
engage
yeah.
them in a little bit of conversation. And I think one of the questions I always tell my clients to ask is, how long have you worked here? If you haven't done the research, I highly recommend you do the research with who you're
Right.
being interviewed by
Right.
before you go in. But hey, I saw that you're with this company for 7 years. Obviously, they're doing something right to keep someone of your talent here. What is
Perfect.
it that kept you here? You're getting their story, but you're really getting an insider view into the culture and the approach and all the direction that they've sort of approached their career path at that company. And you're actually, what I always like to say is, rather than being across the desk from the recruiter or the HR director or the interviewer, you're on the same side of the desk when you can quickly shift that conversation into a little bit downgrade. It allows you to control the interview to a certain degree, and it takes them off their game when they have their
It
15
does.
questions that they want to get through.
It does. It's great. And to add to that, I love it, is to, even if you don't know anyone particular how long they've been there, you can look companies up.
Yeah.
And if they have a
LinkedIn's great.
history
Yeah.
of retention, there's a company in Austin, I think it's NI, possibly National Instruments,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure. It may not be. It may not be national. Anyway, that has a long history of people not quitting, not
Yeah.
leaving. So you can still introduce that from the perspective of, obviously, it's a successful company and they hire people from that perspective. So maybe share with me a little bit what brought you there. Why did I love that? Yeah. I mean, and I always want to know why a position is open. That can get a little, you have to be careful with that one. But I do like to know that in case,
Sure.
as much as you can. The way I start the interview, when I'm talking to people or giving them some thoughts on how to progress in an interview, Steve, and I think I mentioned this, is I start off with answering that question because that's the beginning. If you flub
Yeah.
the "tell me about yourself," then you're nervous. And if you're more
Yeah.
nervous, it just kind of can grow from there.
Yep.
So I've developed a formula for people to answer that can guide them on each interview differently, because they're only going to focus on their skill sets and responsibilities, if you will, in the past that they have achieved, and that's what this new company wants. So you don't spill it all. You don't say a whole bunch of stuff that nobody's interested in. They're not hiring you for that. What do they care?
Yep.
So we can start with that, where then hopefully it keeps those interviewers on track. It also gives them a big breath, because it's like, okay, this person knows that is what we're looking for. Let's just talk about that stuff. It might
Yep.
even erase some of the goofy questions that are on their forever list to ask, and it may not. But so the formula for me is to start there so that they have control as much as you can with initiating that conversation, and go from there. I mean, we talk about a lot of things like appearance and energy and all kinds of stuff, but that's the start of it. Because what I recommend is, so if a company wants these skill sets, and they're talking about implementation of them, not just we want you to do this, but they showcase in their job description, whatever. Well, then when you're getting ready to interview, you hit on target those two or three. Again,
Yep.
I've spent a majority, I've spent a great deal, however they want to say it, in these three industries. Let me tell you about them. I had this project, or I had this,
Yeah.
whatever going on, HR, whatever it is. And that just starts that whole conversation. Number one, you're comfortable with that. You should be able to own that. It's not something out of the ordinary, and you write it up ahead and stuff, but obviously you become familiar with it. But I do something else differently, I think, than most, and that is the following. I suggest people are be proactive at ending that with, and I am no longer at whatever company for due to reorg, or
Yeah.
whatever they want to say, right? But very short, sweet, simple. Because I have found over the years, including myself initially, if I wait to ask that question, and it will be asked. I
Yep.
think it's nuts, but in today's world, they're still asking it. We say too much,
Yeah.
or we
Yeah.
say, "Well, there were 10 of us, and three of us were." I'm like, "Oh no,"
Yeah.
or or they
Major
keep
Will
going on.
Robinson. That's not the right. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
No, you don't put numbers in this.
Yeah.
And they go on and on, in any case, justified because they feel like they need to. Not a good place. Shut it down, let it go. And then I
Yep.
bring it up by saying, so I'm really excited, Steve, talk to you about this opportunity. I look forward to our conversation, and bring it back, what I call bring it back up. So there's a formula, we start off with, and then helping them understand conceptually how to change that up for each interview. Your skills don't change, so I don't want to send that message that you make stuff up, but you can focus on the one or two, the highlights, the first two things on that job requirement, right? And focus on that. Another thing I work on with people is you never say no. So if you're, and I'll ask them, okay, what part of this that you don't do? Is there likely to be a question about something that you've never done, and you don't want to say, no, I've never done that.
Yep.
So my point of that is twofold. One, if you've worked with a team, if you've worked with that at some level, you have some introductory knowledge of whatever that is, that's the answer you give them. If you don't sense that, then you talk about your OJT experience for years.
Yep.
I have been thrown out, a lot of things have been thrown at me over the years that I've learned on my own. Let me give you an example. So
That's
either way, you're owning it and say, I can do it. You don't say I can't or I never have, because that's going to be the end of that.
Yeah, I love that. You made me think of something that I often tell people when they're interviewing, but it actually started with my own nervousness about being a speaker, keynote speaker or session speaker for a conference or a company. And one of the things that I would ask what they were looking to accomplish, try to get the lay of the land, what was their theme, whatever. And I realized actually that wasn't the the power question that I had hoped. And what I started doing was, and actually wrote it into my speaking contract. There's a whole section that they have to fill out. But what would it take for me to do better than you ever expected
I love that.
in this role, right? Or in this, with this conference? How do I
Yeah.
make sure that this is a grand slam success? And I ask them to think back to the last two or three speakers that they've had at prior events or anybody that they've seen, and just tell me what you're
Oh,
looking for and what would make sense. And that, I will tell you that not only did my fee go up with those, I didn't have to negotiate as hard, but I actually had people who are like, you're the only speaker that ever asks about that. They come in
I'm
with their
sure.
canned presentation, etc. So I adapted that to the interview process with my clients. And I said, when you get the opportunity, ask them what it takes for this position, in their opinion, to be a grand slam success. What are they looking for? Because they will give you the answers to the test without even knowing it about what is required. And and it made me think when you said that, you probably don't ask, how often the position's turned over or whatever, but your follow up could be, and my assumption would be people that have been in this role in the last, let's say over the last 5-10 years, they've been able to take that skill set and adapt it into other avenues and opportunities
Right.
within the company. So could you tell me about that? Not only does it tell you, that you're hearing the position, but it tells the interviewer that you're also thinking like, hey, I want to be here 10 years, right, or
Yeah.
5 years or whatever. And you'll often get a real big morsel of it. Well, we can't keep anybody in this role for more than 2 years. Well, that tells you something. So you get your question
Yeah.
opportunity to say, well, what is it that creates such stress or anxiety for people? Or what
Yeah.
often, maybe if you can't answer what it is going to take to
Yeah.
be super successful, what will it take to survive in this role? What are you looking for in terms of skill sets? Completely different dynamic, but incredibly valuable in terms of the detail that they'll give you. Plus, it shows that you're thinking like, hey, I'm coming in without that, arrogant confidence that I'm going to
Yeah.
be here and I'm going to do a better job. But I really want to know what it's going to take to really blow this thing out of the water and be successful for you, because you're putting the time and energy into hiring me. I want to make sure I make you look good. Right. So it has been really a game changer for a lot of the folks that I've asked, because they didn't think to do that, which kept the sort of adversarial component of the interview sort of front and center, as opposed to getting on the same side of the desk with them and really trying to collaborate as much as possible to learn what you can during the process. Because, as you said, it's a two-way street.
I wonder if anybody has ever stumbled over that answer.
I'm sure. Well, I do know one person who they had made. So it was actually the recruiter, and I went back and I said, why don't you ask the recruiter before you go in for the interview what they know the answer to be? And so they're like, okay. So they went back. I happen to know the recruiter, and the recruiter is like, oh my God, that is a fantastic question. I can't honestly tell you I know. And so I encourage my client. I said, when they tell you that, what they tell you, or if they say they don't know, ask them if they'd be willing to go out on a limb and find out, so that you have a better understanding. I said, at minimum, even if you're not the right candidate for them, they're displaying their deep desire to deliver the best result for the company, right? As the recruiter. So it'll benefit them. And so you'll be creating a positive ripple either way. And he did that, went back to the recruiter. The recruiter said, great question. Let me find out. I'll get back to you. And they had basically a really good download of what has happened and what's transpired. They recognize they have a culture problem. They recognize that there's been some
Whoa.
challenges. But the big factor was that this role has basically not been under anybody's direct supervision for a very long time, and this was now being shifted under a vice president that knows nothing about it. So
Oh
you're
boy.
thinking about this as you're coming in. Now you have a little
Yeah.
better lay of the land.
Yeah.
They actually ended up utilizing that to negotiate a higher salary, because they could bring that experience level
You're
that
right.
this other VP didn't have. And so it ended up working better than they ever
That's great.
expected. But, use that art, whoever got your foot in the door, whether it's a
Yeah.
recruiter or they responded,
Right.
ask those types of questions, because it will be a really, really powerful bit of feedback that you can utilize in other capacities, follow-up questions, or
Yeah.
maybe determining on your own whether that's the right fit for you, if that's
Right.
you want to go hang your hat or whatever.
Exactly. No,
So
yeah, I was also thinking that to make it that two way, but I really really like that because it would show if it's live like this, do they really know?
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes in a startup, I'm caution people in a startup or in any role that's new. You need to
may
find
not
out as
know.
much as you can about
Yep.
it. If it's new, who put it into play? Are you going to be working for that person? Or is that a naysayer because they're looking at the money? So the CFO says, no, we don't want to have this position, and somebody else is pushing it, and then in 6 months they don't have the money to pay you. So, yeah, lots of nuances in that direction of finding out as much as you possibly can about any opportunity. But I do like that as well. How do I shine? I mean, I
Yeah,
do. I have mask as something, but not quite as emphatic as you do. So, what does it mean to be successful? But I like the way you say it, and even bigger. No, not just successful, but really blow it out of the water. How do
yeah,
I? What would it take to do that?
yeah. And by
That's
just even asking the question, whether you're getting, whether you're trying to speak or get a job, it does tell that person the other side that you are
yeah,
firmly fixed on being successful, right?
absolutely.
So
Yep,
I,
yep.
yeah, Madeline, I could talk to you all day, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're definitely gonna have to do a follow up, and I know we're talking about doing some things for the pond. There's just so much
Right.
good stuff coming from you. But if you're okay with it, we always like to wind down these interviews with a few Ripple connection questions. They're not gotcha interview questions. How about
Okay.
that? So, what did the 7-year-old Madeline want to be when she grew up?
Oh my. Um, That's a hard one, Steve. I am not a person who grew up with possibilities, with dreams, either from parents or anyone else. And that has run through my life,
Yeah,
giving you a bit more to that answer than you might have expected or want to use. But I've never had, I've just faced and grown and done what I've done, but I've never had dreams. So I can't think of anything at 7. At 8 we moved to a small town, and I do remember I went to Catholic school, coming out of and went at the end of the year in the day in New York. You went to school till June, middle of June,
yeah.
and the nun didn't give me my didn't tell me if I passed.
Oh,
And I remember coming out crying and saying something to my mother. I don't know, I passed. And they found the nun and said, "Well, yes, of course. Sorry, we didn't have all her records, whatever."
yeah.
Um, but I really can't say I grew up in an environment where anything like that projected.
Fair enough. I like that answer actually a lot. If you weren't doing what you're doing now and you could pick anything to do for the next 5 years, what would you pick?
Well, be in service. Again, the two things that, and it's good timing for that question because I am looking at pretty significant change. So, one would be I really am very interested in helping people through that interview process. My intuition is very, very strong, and my talent in that world is strong, and I like helping people. And again, I mentioned the board positions from the same perspective to be able to give back to a company what I've learned over the years in a way that may be a little different than other board members because I don't want to be as technical. I want to be more an advisory kind of person if I can find that kind
Yep.
of opportunity. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, any board that would have you would be very, very lucky to
Oh,
have you, no doubt.
you.
What do people get wrong about Madeline York?
Oh, that's easy. So, what people get wrong about Madeleine York is that I have a face of strength. I exhibit that. I can do anything kind of thing. I don't even do it on purpose.
Yep.
It's just what people perceive in me without
Yep.
realizing that Madeline has blood going through her veins and that she is easily um, bothered. I won't say distressed, but bothered by unpleasantness, which one does not think about. Again, when I talk about the introversion, extroversion kind of roles, I think that's all very misunderstood because you've taken the assessment I use, and the secondary
Yep.
energy is very big for me, which is very much about caring and helping people and so on and so forth. So I think people miss that in me. So if I ever show up in a way that doesn't seem consistent with get it done, it's like, huh? Why can't you do it? And so people often come to me just with that expectation, and sometimes I'm not gonna show up as they might expect. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. What do you consider your superpower?
Spiritual or physical?
Could be either, whatever feels right for
Well,
you to answer.
superpower for me is in the realm of my angels, of God, of being, letting go.
Yeah.
My superpower, quite frankly, is when I can let go.
Ah, that's a
If
good
that
one. I
makes
love
any
that.
sense, because it's a non-power. But when
But
I can
still,
do
yeah,
that, yeah, I find myself much more successful in almost any aspect of life. Just letting go.
for someone that is feeling pretty deflated in their job search, what piece of advice would you give them right now?
That's a little tougher because I want to go into history. I want to know what they're doing, why they deflated. If they're sitting in front of a computer all day, I would address that. So I'd almost need the specifics, Steve,
Sure.
on that one.
Fair enough.
Um, because I'm not Pollyanna either. I wouldn't tell somebody, "Oh, don't worry, this could be the
It'll be
best thing that
fine.
ever happened
Yep.
to you." That's not me. So I think again, it's harder for me to answer that within any specifics because I don't know what's driving.
Sure.
I
Fair
had a
enough.
client recently who just went through major heart surgery, very discouraged, but
Mm,
it really wasn't as much to do with that as it was his health.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have an out of the box one for that.
That's fair. So here's a different one. If you could give one piece of advice to people that drive by on the way to work or on their way to school and home at night, what piece of advice would you give people that you'd love to share if it was on a billboard that
Yeah,
they
yeah. Slow down. Be mindful of each day. Know that we don't have tomorrow. I guess there's several there, but just I wouldn't say this, just chill, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Is we need to calm down a little bit
well,
and not rush in front of the car or not risk an accident, because especially what's going on in Texas right now, that really
yeah,
brings it home
does.
with family and children. So maybe that's why that word came up for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Last two questions. When you hear the concept of the ripple effect, what does it conjure up for you? What's it make you think of?
Well, for me, it's the connecting, constant connecting. And we've talked a little bit about that, but the ripple effect, if you think about water, how it's all going to flow nice and it's smooth and have impact in a way. I mean, well, again, taking out what's going on in Texas, but if you
Yeah,
think about a nice calm lake or even the ocean, how it comes in at you and it's part of your world momentarily sometimes,
yeah,
but it's always there. So you can always rely on, and in the case of the ripple effect, you can always rely on if you do what it proposes, it will be effective. It will work.
I love that. I love that. And finally, what ripple, positive ripple, can I be looking to create for you?
Given I'm reinventing myself and you have done that, I think we could have conversations.
I'm all over that. I'm happy to help you any way I can. No, that I would be honored to be a resource and help guide
Yeah.
you as you're looking to do this next thing because you are without question one of my favorite people. You have
Oh,
always been such a really really bright spot. I know that oftentimes it's very rare for for you to have a business relationship that evolves into a
right.
friendship. But you and Norman have been great friends to me for a very long time, and I'm so grateful and
Well,
appreciative of
thank
that.
you.
You
Thank you,
you
Steve.
do amazing work. How would I guess I lied? There's one last question. How would you like people to learn about your work and get engaged with you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I do have Facebook. Those are primarily my online or social media connections. Of course,
Okay,
email is myork@yorkinc.com, and phone number is a Houston number. Actually, it's 512-565-8506.
fantastic.
And
We'll put all
texting
that.
as well.
Okay,
So,
we'll put all that in the show notes, and I
okay.
just we definitely want to make sure that everybody knows how to get a hold of you. So
Thank you.
I highly encourage you guys. Those that are listening through the podcast platforms, those of you that will see this on the YouTube, reach out to Madeleine. You will be blown away by what she can bring to your job search. Help you narrow down what to do when you're in those interview situations, so that you maximize your chance of getting that role. I think you will be very, very glad to engage her without question. So I just want to say thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. We don't take your time lightly. I want to bring amazing guests like Madeleine to you so that you get some of this incredible content you can put to work. So hopefully you benefited greatly from this episode. I know I have, and I can't wait for the next one with Madeleine. So thank you so much, Madeleine. Take care.
Thank
And as
you.
always, ripple on.